It's that time of the summer season when fruit and vegetables are getting big and flowers are in full bloom. And if we're not careful, bugs are having some fun with the garden bounty. We'll talk bugs, planting for the cool season, and more with Master Gardener Lynn Kuntzman in Garden for Life.
Lynn Kuntzman, thanks for joining us once again. Always a pleasure to have you.
Nice to be here.
So as the summer grinds on, the plants expect the kinds of conditions they get. The gardeners, if they're new at this, maybe not so much, but things to think about as we get like halfway through the hot season with September about a month out.
Yeah. So you're bringing in crops in August, and you just got to keep patrolling for critters that are assaulting your plants. Keep the moisture levels even. It's hard when we get up into triple digits and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So be checking the moisture levels. A lot of stuff is going to kind of start going into sinensis near the end of the month. Approaching September, a lot of your vines are going to start maybe looking peaked and ragged, and you're harvesting a bunch of stuff and pulling those out. Get them into the compost pile, and start prepping your beds to put in some of those fall vegetables that you want. So hopefully you started those back in July, and you've got your cole crops ready to go in. So you can do just some garden prep that way.
Yeah, just talk about that part of it then, because I'm looking at the kinds of things that are recommended on the August list: broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, Chinese cabbage, pak choy. So these are things you should have put seeds into stuff somewhere else away from the garden.
You should have started them back in July, or you can go to the nurseries, and the nurseries will have them starting in like mid-August. Then you can go and just buy the little transplants and tuck them in. Even when I get them, because I'm too disorganized to start everything from seed. Oh no, I am. I mean,
but come on, you're the statewide Master Gardener of the Year.
I know. It's like I have said always, do as I say, not as I do, and so I buy starts because it's just easier for me to make sure I've got good, healthy plants to go in the ground, and I will tuck cabbage and broccoli and all those other little guys in between my tomato plants, in the summer garden. So the tomatoes kind of give them some shade, and then the little cabbages and broccolis and cauliflowers can start growing, and they're happy kind of getting afternoon shade from that really baking sun that we sometimes have in August and September, because they really do like cooler weather, eventually, but they'll grow, they'll grow really well in those conditions. So,
okay.
Or, if you want to have your own separate bed for them, me putting them between my tomatoes helps me remember that I want to grow crops from different families in my garden bed on a rotational basis. So if I've got tomatoes, which are members of the Solanaceae family, the nightshade family, growing in a bed, and I don't want to grow those in that bed next year.
Mm-hmm.
I want to put something else between, moving those kinds of plants into that bed again. So putting my cruciferous plants, or my greens, you can sow your lettuce and mustard greens and those kinds of things between your tomatoes. So you're putting in a leaf crop rather than a nightshade crop. So you're kind of doing an accelerated rotation through your garden that way, because if you're growing in those shoulder seasons, the spring, and now we're talking about the fall shoulder season, where most people, they put in a summer garden and then they walk away.
Uh-huh.
A lot of us, though, like to grow year-round, and so it makes rotation difficult. But putting some of those other families of crops in the beds where you're taking out your peppers or your eggplants, or you're taking out your tomatoes, or you will be taking out your tomatoes and peppers, that helps that rotation cycle.
Lynn Kunstman with us once again on the Jefferson Exchange for Garden for Life, and we will be able to take emails for future segments. This one's recorded, but send emails along. I put them in a stack, and the next time we get Lynn on, I ask her those questions. So that's to jx@jeffnet.org. So without putting, for example, some cruciferous vegetables in either after or concurrent with the tomatoes, would you not want to plant the tomatoes in the same place in the next year without something between them?
Right, you would not, because any pests that specialize on the Solanaceous family, remember, insects kind of concentrate their efforts they specialize on a family or a genus of plants. And if there are insects and pests that can deal with all the alkaloid chemicals in solanaceous plants, the nightshades, they're going to be present in the soil. They're going to be present in that area in your garden, and you want to put something else in there that they're not going to recognize, and then they'll run away shrieking, and hopefully, and then, but if you put the same crop in the same place year after year, you're just building up the insects that are specializing on that crop, and you're setting yourself up for failure, because they're gonna be there in their numbers, and it's like, oh boy, she's planting zucchini again, hooray! And oops.
Yeah, the cafeteria's open for the year. Come on, guys.
Yeah, come on down. So yeah. So.
All right, so you want to make sure you put some bugs at a disadvantage. Can you work that to your advantage? Are there some things in particular that, I mean, have they run away shrieking no matter what the cruciferous would be, or are there other things that really make them get out of there fast?
No, I don't know for certain about that, but there are lots of there's a lot of discussion about companion planting things when you're growing your actual vegetables in the summer, things like that are highly aromatic, like marigolds or nasturtiums or basil or garlic and onions. You're mixing those in with your other crops. Sometimes those have an ability to divert or confuse insects that are coming in for a specific thing, like a pepper that you want to have, right? And so anytime you can rotate crops through, and we like to do it on a 3-year cycle. So you grow your tomatoes and peppers in one bed 1 year. The next year you follow that with like a leaf crop. So lettuces, mustards, those kinds of things. And maybe after that a root crop if you grow carrots and beets and turnips and those kinds of things. And then maybe and at some point you want to put in the pea family, which are your beans and peas. So you want to move those through those beds kind of in a systematic way, unlike I do. And people who really have this down, they have a rotational system. They have their gardens in a chart, and they have their beds labeled, and they're moving things through those beds systematically. So they go maybe 3 or 4 years before they put peppers back in the same bed or zucchini back in the same bed. And that's really helpful for confusing the insects for long enough that then the natural predators that are out there looking for things to eat will find them and take them out, Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Is there also an advantage, Lynn, in soil health? I mean, when you talk about, for example, putting your broccoli in the shade of your tomatoes, I mean, at what point do you start to think maybe you're depleting the nutrients your soil has?
Well, if you're green cover cropping during the winter, I like to grow a cover crop during the winter and then chop and drop it before I plant my summer vegetables and let it kind of dry on the surface. Or if you're keeping things mulched, there is a constant nutrient cycle that's occurring because of the macroinvertebrates, the insect life that's in the soil. The worms and the beetles and the things that eat detritus are there eating and pooping, and they're providing nutrient all the time. So if you're keeping your soil well covered and you're growing green manure crops, it's, you don't really have to worry that much about your soil health. It's taking care of itself.
Lynn Kunstman with us on Garden for Life once again on the Jefferson Exchange. Not live this time, but get your questions in for next time at jx@jeffnet.org. jx@jeffnet.org. This is probably the first time that I've actually looked at the list of things you're supposed to be doing in the garden, in this case for the month of August, and noticing, oh my goodness, I've already done this. I actually had a crop of garlic this year, so I'm figuring out which heads to save for planting in October.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, good. Yeah. So, garlic is being, you probably pulled it in July, and now you're dusting it off and braiding it up and hanging it. It's really rewarding to get that crop in.
It is. In fact, a friend already used some of the garlic and said, wow, it was really pungent. I said, I think it's because it wasn't cured yet. There is that process to go through, right?
Well, right. But there are lots of garlics that are very pungent by nature. They're very spicy, very hot. Depends on which one you planted. Mm-hmm. So they can, even after they've cured and they've been hanging for a while, some of them can be very tangy. So that's not necessarily how long they've been curing.
Mm-hmm. All right. So the curing process, just to let them dry. I know it's not in direct sunlight. I got that wrong for a few days, but
right. You don't want to put them in direct sun. They should be in a shaded area with good circulation, and then you can wash them when you first take them out of the garden when the soil is still damp, but we recommend that you just let them dry and then brush the soil off them after they've dried off, and hang. I trim the roots off to get most of the soil off of them. I peel maybe the first layer of the paper off the bulb so that it's cleaner, and then I braid them up and hang them.
Yeah, braiding gets difficult, I've noticed, once the leaves have had a chance to dry out.
Yeah, you kind of want to braid them when they're still a little green. I do it. I run some string through mine, some twine, sisal twine, mm-hmm. so that I have kind of the braid kind of all holds together because the twine passes up through the braid, and then it acts as a loop that I can hang on a hook mm-hmm. in my patio. But doing it when they're a little bit green still makes it easier.
In terms of what to save for sticking back in the garden for next year's crop, you just want to take the biggest one, or is there some other science there? Mm-hmm.
I choose my biggest bulbs because that's just kind of a gardener thing. You save your biggest onion in the garden and let it go to seed so that it makes bigger onions for you next year. That's kind of old school gardening practice. So, I use the big cloves, but all of them will germinate. So even the little bulblets that they make, sometimes up on the stem, you can plant and they'll grow a garlic bulb for you. So, Yeah,
it was definitely fun watching them come up, those little green peace signs coming out of the ground as we get from winter into spring. Now, you were talking about buying starts instead of, coming from seeds. And it just that's always good for a refresher course. In about a minute or so, what do you recommend to look for when you're buying started vegetables?
Sure. Well, what you want to avoid are anything that look woody in the cell pack. So usually you get these in 6 cells, and you want they need to look fairly tender but robust. In other words, they're large, they're leafy, they're not losing leaves, they're not yellowing out, and the stem is not woody, because sometimes those things sit on the shelf in the nursery and they get really kind of beyond where they should be, and they start to get woody in the cell pack. So look for really green, juicy, robust-looking plants. And then you really can't go wrong if you get them in the ground and keep them watered well into the fall. You're in good shape. Okay.
We'll visit again soon. Lynn Kunstman visiting us more often through the growing season in the heart of the summer with Garden for Life. Lynn, always a pleasure.
It was really fun.
Jeff Riley and Lynn are happy to take up concerns from listeners, and you can get questions into the next session by emailing jx@jeffnet.org. Don't go away. Underground History is next. We'll hear about research into what the Rogue Valley's famous Britt family ate and why.